Now, it looks like a done deal. Paris St Germain have reportedly struck an agreement with the Saudi Pro League side Al-Hilal for the sale of Brazilian striker Neymar, subject to a medical examination. The BBC reports that the transfer fee is around 90 million euros. Neymar, who scored 118 goals in 173 appearances at PSG, was contracted to stay in Paris until 2025. For more, I'm joined by sports journalist Firas Echi. Thanks for joining us, Firas. So, is the saga finally over, and does it signal a change of policy at PSG?
Clearly, PSG are done with the stars, are done with these global icons that provide so much in terms of media, but a lot less in terms of on the pitch and what they give to the football team and the ambitions when it comes to the Champions League. They are done with this policy. They're looking for the results instead of the marketing policy. 5 years ago, have you told me that Neymar is not going to win the Ballon d'Or, is not going to win the World Cup, that the career at PSG would be the end of everything and all that potential that this player, promised in the beginning of his career? I would have found that hard to believe, but it's a shame that his adventure in Paris and in Europe comes to an end in this way. He will not be part of the greats. He will not be part of those big history pages. And that's what's sad about this whole story. But yes, when it comes to PSG and the episode with Kylian Mbappe this summer and, Neymar not being part of Luis Enrique plans in the future, yeah, they are done with the stars, and now they're looking to actually have players who are disciplined tactically, have players who don't get injured 3/4 of the season, and that's what Neymar's leaving PSG would mean.
But they're still very much hoping for a Champions League victory at some point, I assume.
It depends on whether Kylian Mbappe is staying this season. Without him, there's no way. There were a couple of good signs watching them playing against Lorient, even though it was like a goalless draw, but when it comes to the tactical discipline, the players were disciplined. The players, in terms of defending, in terms of the midfield with Ugarte, there's a lot of positive signs when it comes to this new squad. However, that last edge, that lethal touch that you need at the end, at the final line, it just wasn't there. That messy touch that opens the corner, that Kylian Mbappe run, it just wasn't there. So if Kylian Mbappe isn't part of PSG this season, yeah, they can't look for it. They can't dream about it. It's quite impossible when you have players like Ramos and Asensio who are good enough to win the Ligue 1, but not good enough to win the Champions League.
That'll be fascinating to follow this season. Now, Al-Hilal then, they couldn't get Mbappe, they couldn't get Messi. Neymar's a pretty good third option for them, isn't it? And, I mean, for Saudi Arabia more generally, it's a coup, isn't it?
It is. I mean, Saudi Arabia's policy is quite interesting. I think in a couple of, they didn't even get to $2 billion of spending when it comes to this transfer market. However, they sort of managed to do what Qatar did with 220 billions of spending hosting the World Cup, which is keeping Saudi Arabia's name in the headlines in Europe. And that's what they manage. I mean, every week you have a story. Once Mane's story faded, you got Henderson. Once Henderson's story faded, you've got Riyad Mahrez. And now you've got Neymar. Every week they are in the front pages in Europe. And that's what they're trying to do here. It's part of the 2030 project, 2030 vision. It's some sort of soft power, but they're doing it brilliantly and in a smart way. And now Neymar is the latest in this series.
And just to add to the superstars you mentioned, Benzema, Ronaldo, Kante, Fofana. If we talk about the players themselves, what's motivating them? I mean, most people are saying it's purely the money.
What do you think? Of course it's money. Of course it's money. When a player is worth 20 and 30 and you offer them 100, 150, these are ridiculous amounts. So yes, it is mainly the money. Look at them. I mean, they're players at the end of their career, and no one else on earth would offer them closer to 50 million, and they're getting 100. So yes, obviously it's the money. Now, some of them would say they're also ambitious enough to actually try and change football in that region and shift the Saudi League and that entire region in terms of football. There is some truth to that. There is some truth to what Ronaldo is doing. There is some truth to what Benzema is doing. It will become a spotlight and a hub of football in the Middle East and in Asia. But the number one motivation is obviously money.
Right. And I don't know if you watched any of the first match day of the Saudi Pro League this weekend. Do you see it as a true challenge to the hegemony of European football and the Premier League?
No, it doesn't. No, let's like stay realistic about it. It is shifting things. The first games were incredible in terms of football, in terms of the tactics, in terms of the ambience. Everything is great. Everything is actually heading somewhere. But let's not compare it to leagues that have been there and have been successfully there for a decade now. So there's no comparison when it comes to the Premier League, 100 years old of tradition and success and a worldwide spotlight. Everybody tunes every weekend around the planet to watch the Premier League. So they are shifting somewhere. It will actually depend on the persistence, because when it comes to the Qataris, for example, they did this 20 years ago and then it faded. It was part of a short-term project. So how far are you willing to go in terms of persisting, in terms of keep this going? This what we will be watching. And if they do it over 10, 20 years, they will be catching up with some European leagues, but not right away and not with the Premier League.
Well, with the amount of money they're investing in right now, it certainly seems like I'd imagine it's a long-term project. Firas, Echi, thank you so much for your insight there.
Thank you.